Hey y'all, welcome back to Susie on the Farm. If you're new here, I'm Susie, the owner and creator here. And if you're returning, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it so much. In today's video, I have 4 fun Valentine inspired thrift flips for you. I finally got around to doing a few. Now, I don't normally do a lot of Valentine decorating. However, I do have a store. So I wanted to make a really full display. So I needed to make a few more items for that. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get started with today's projects. I've picked out a few items that I know that I want to do some work on. This giant heart was actually given to me by a longtime customer, Carolyn. So I definitely want to make that over. I have this heart baking pan, a frame, a wooden heart, and just a little tin planter. So let's go ahead and get started and see what I can come up with. For project number 1, I definitely want to start with this baking pan. I had the idea with it having 4 hearts that we could put some vintage blocks in there. And of course, I need to cover the top of the blocks. I want to make them a little bit more cohesive with the rest of my Valentine's Day decor. So I am using Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going over the tops of these blocks, making sure to get into all of those details. I ended up having to do 2 coats on the tops of these blocks that were going to spell out XOXO. I was so happy when I went through my big bag of these vintage blocks that I was able to find XOXO, because oddly enough, the X and the O are on the same block. So I actually had to have 4 of the same block, and luckily I did have them. In this step, I do want to age up these blocks a little bit more and bring out all that detail on the front. So I'm just going over the entire blocks with a coat of aging wax. This is the Fusion Aging Wax. It's my absolute favorite aging product. You want me to do the bottom. I started doing the bottom of the first one, and then I realized that I wouldn't need to do that. But there's the difference with the waxed one and the not waxed. Now, at first, I thought I might not paint this pan, but as you can see, there's quite a few scratches in there, and the metal was just kind of washed out when I put the blocks in there. So I decided to go big or go home. I was a little bit tired of red after Christmas, but I've had a break from it for a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 coats of Highlander. This is a Fusion mineral paint. It's an all-in-one paint. It'll paint right over this shiny metal, no problem. You will see some brush strokes if that's an issue for you. You might want to add an additive so you have more texture, and you won't even see the brush strokes because they'll be hidden in with the texture. For this project, the brush strokes don't bother me one little bit. I think they add lots of character. So I did 2 coats over the whole pan, and I let that dry. Once that dried, I wanted to add in just some character to this piece. I didn't want to use a white ink because I want it to match the blocks. So what I'm doing here is I'm just painting on that plaster, and then that wasn't working the greatest, so I just painted it onto my brayer and then used my brayer over my stamp. This is ephemeral type. It's just lots of ephemera, writings and everything. And so I just stamped on the outside, and I don't need a perfect impression on this. I just need some detail. When I pulled it up, I felt like there wasn't quite enough detail, so I did go back over a few areas, just putting the paint on the areas where I needed it, and pressed it right into that paint. And now, if you ever do something like this, please remember that Fusion paint has a built-in sealer, and it does not come off once it's dried. And I did not want that to stay on my stamp. So immediately, once I got this stamped, I took it to the sink and I washed my entire stamp with hot water and Dawn dish soap so I could get all of that paint off there before it dried. I love how this turned out. It's just the perfect amount of detail. And then really all that's left to do is put hot glue these blocks in there. But I'm a little extra lately. I have started paper crafting or junk journaling. If y'all are interested in that, I might share more on that later. But for now, I'm just really enjoying paper crafting and learning a new skill. And it's really sparking my creativity. So all I've done here is I cut out a little tag out of a file folder. And in another project that I'm working on, I'm using this wallpaper, decoupage paper, and I had a little scrap, so I thought, well, that would match perfectly. So I just tore the scrap up and I placed it in the center of the tag. And then I also used the ephemeral type stamp again with some distressed brown ink and went over the top. I almost did it upside down there, just to add a little extra detail, just to make this tag look a bit more vintage. And I also use that same ink to go around the edges of the tag and distress it. I punched a hole in it, and then I used some random ribbon to tie this tag onto our project. I really wanted to use this vintage lace, but it wouldn't fit through the hole, and I just couldn't quite find how I wanted to use it. So we'll use that again later if I get the chance. But even though this tag is not necessary, I feel like it really added so much to this project. And if you give this as a gift to someone, you could write your little love message on the back of the tag. And I just think this turned out absolutely precious. What do you guys think about this one? Before we get to the rest of today's projects, I want to show you guys the new Connie Lines and Designs rice paper spring release that has just come out today. I'm going to show you each page, and these are all available on my website now. So this is I Will Always Love You, and I love him. He's got, I believe that's the new DIY color Eden in there. And he's just perfect. And of course, all of these come with the full size and the multiples. The multiples are great. They've got 2 3x5s and a 5x7. This is our Highland cow, and I believe her name is Franny, and I love her little eyebrows and her nostrils. She's just got so much attitude. And again, we have multiples of both of these, and this is our Highland cow named Gilbert. He's a cutie. Love him. Okay, we also have, this one's called Lilac You More, and if you love the color purple, you are absolutely going to love this stunning design. It's a full page of lilacs in this vase, and it's just got so much detail in it. This is my favorite, I think. I can't wait to use it, and I'm not even really that crazy about purple, but this one is just stunning. And of course, we have the multiples of this one as well. I'm not ready for you, Toad. You are out of place. Get you back in there. Okay, so this one is called Busy Bees, and it's going to be perfect for summer. It's got 4 bees and the honeycombs and just very vibrant yellows. I love this one. And again, we have the multiples of this one with the 5x7 and the 2 3x5s. This design is called Spring Buck, and he's just perfect. Look at his little horns about to pop up there. He is just a little guy, and he's just getting his horns. What a cutie. And we have the multiples in them. And then to the left there, we have our pretty little spring doe with her little floral necklace and tiara. She doesn't have her little horns, Mr. Toad, get out of my way there. I'm going to get to you, I promise. Anyway, so we have our beautiful little spring doe. I'm not sure why she's blue. I can't remember if Connie actually said, but she's beautiful either way. Finally, we get to our Mr. Totally Cool, and he is cool, let me tell you. He's going to be a perfect addition to quirky spring decor, and I just love him sitting under that flower. This one is called Mini Cuties, and it's got the 3 heart designs, a little dragonfly, and a bee. And I'm actually going to get to use this one in today's project. This is the only one I'm going to get to. I kind of lost track of my days. But anyway, that is your new Connie Lines and Designs papers that are available on my website if you want to get some of those. Moving on to our next project, I picked up this really thick wood heart. It's a Hobby Lobby piece, and it had about 4 or 5 tags on there, and I fought with them, and I finally got them off. On the front side, it has this Mr. and Mrs., but it's not raised any. It didn't have any texture on it. So I was able to cover that up easily, and because I want to kind of keep a lot of the same elements in all of these projects because they're all going in the same display, I'm using the plaster again, and I'm actually loving this color. I think it's a retired color, to be honest, but there's more fusion that are similar, but I'm loving this one, and it is perfect for this wallpaper decoupage paper. There's 2 of these. This is a Roycycled decoupage paper. There's a vintage wallpaper and a wallpaper. One of them has larger roses on it. I don't remember which one this was. They're both absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to decoupage this onto the front of this heart. I've painted it with 2 coats on the front, the back, the sides, everything. And this, you've probably seen me decoupage before, but if you haven't, I always use a starter strip, and this time I am using Fusion Decoupage and Transfer Gel. This is one of my favorites. This or the DIY Liquid Patina both work beautifully. And then I will mist my paper. That like wets those fibers and allows them to be stretched and just really makes it where you don't have any wrinkles. And then I will just move my paper up and then go on down. I like to do strips, small strips at a time. To me, it's just easier to handle, and I don't get any wrinkles. So I'm just working my way down, and I got this paper decoupaged all over the top part. My paper is completely dry now. That's very important. You want to make sure before you do this step that your paper is completely dry. And then as you can see, I'm just sanding in a downward motion to get all that excess paper off. And don't worry, I'm not going to throw that in the garbage because you can see I used some of it in the previous project. After I got all the excess decoupage paper removed, I'm going to use my distressing ink here and just go over all the edges. I wasn't able to get there in that corner, so I just put a little on my brush. I flipped it over and then I said, oh, I need to do the back too. This is not a necessary step, but I'm all about the vintage and making things look old, so I chose to do that. And for this bow, I was able to use that lace. I tied 3 of them together, and I'm just going to hot glue it up on this corner. This is like a shelf sitting heart that kind of sits over on its side, so I put it up on that corner. Then I'm going to use some Scrabble tiles to spell out the word love on it. These are new Scrabble tiles. I got them at Dollar Tree, so of course I'm going to, again, use my ink pad to ink them up. I went around all the edges on them, and by the time I got to the V and the E, I was like doing it a little bit darker, so I had to actually go back over the L and the O because I really liked having a lot of ink on there. That's coming from my paper crafting, and I am absolutely loving it. Next project, I'm going to show y'all how I made this distressed ink because it's really kind of a brownish color, so I'll show y'all in this last project. Then I'm just going to hot glue these letters down, and this heart is done. It's a perfect addition to my Valentine's display, and it goes so well with all the other projects that we're doing today. Project number 3 is going to be this massive wall hanging heart that my customer Carolyn brought me. She was headed to donate. She cleaned out her stash, and I couldn't let this one go. So she gave it to me. And it's another Hobby Lobby piece. I'm going to leave the back just like it is, but I'm really going to vintage up the front of it. I don't need it to say Happy Valentine's Day. Obviously, this would be in a Valentine's display, but I thought about using this lattice rose paint inlay. I've used it back when it first came out and haven't used it again, so we're definitely going to use it today. I did feel like I didn't really care for the color pink that was on there, so I'm going to go with a softer pink. I'm using DIY clay-based paint, and this is the color Petticoat Pink, and it's just a much more softer pink. And if I get any on the white, that's metal. DIY paint is water-soluble, so it's super easy just to wipe it back off. And I just threw caution to the wind here and just knew that I had to get all over that, so I was like, well, I'll just wipe it back off that white. So I got 2 coats painted on all of the pink parts with this Petticoat Pink. Initially, I was just going to do the paint inlay over the banner there in the front, but I did decide to go ahead and use all the designs and just make this super vintage. So I've cut these all down to the size that needs to be, and if you've never used a paint inlay before, the way that they work is that is actual paint on the back of those, and it's water soluble, and we are going to imprint it into the wet paint on this design. Instead of using the paint though, I love to use the DIY liquid patina. This is actually a sealer, decoupage medium, a lot of different uses for this, and you can also use it with your paint inlays. I tend to have better results with this medium because I believe it's because it has that sealer in it. So once I use it with my paint inlay, it somewhat seals that paint in there, so I'm less likely to smear it or mess it up after I've removed the paper. So the next step after you get a good coat of the liquid patina on there is to wet the paint side of your inlay and then lay it into the wet paint or the wet liquid patina. And then I use my hands to rub it smooth and a brayer, if I can find my brayer here. I remember, yeah, I couldn't find it for that first one, but I did locate it eventually. And then I'm going to use my mister bottle. I'm going to be careful not to go over that pink paint on the other parts of the heart just because it hasn't been sealed yet and I don't want to reactivate it. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and just dab off any of the excess water. And I'm going to finish this one up completely before I do the ones behind it. So I'm using my heat gun to dry it. You can let it dry naturally or you can use a heat gun. And you can tell when it's dry. You can feel it with your hands. And also it turns, you know, It's not as vibrant in the color like it is now. Then I'm re-wetting it with my mister bottle, and you can tell it turns back really vibrant, and that means that it is ready to go. It should be imprinted into that paint, and here's where the magic happens. Once it's wet, your backing will release, so you just slowly pull it up, and then your gorgeous image is transferred onto your paint, and it is part of that paint now. I'm going to use my heat gun to dry that paint on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and seal this one up and let that sealer dry. The reason I'm doing that is because when I start this part right here, if I accidentally get water onto that top part, I do not want it to smear my paint, so I've sealed it in. I'll show y'all how I seal here when I finish these others though. So now I'm just repeating the same process, laying down the liquid patina, putting my paint inlay paint side down into it, rubbing it in really good, letting it dry. Then I'm going to come back, re-wet it, and I am going to remove them and leave the beautiful image into the paint. So I felt like that this press tin just looked too plain. It didn't show. I wanted to dry brush over it, and I decided again to go big or go home. So I'm using red. This time I'm using DIY Marquee. I'm using a chip brush, and as you can see, I'm not even dipping it in the paint. I dipped it into what was left on the lid, and then I wiped almost every bit of it back, and then I'm very, very gently just going over that white pressed tin, and just a little bit of that DIY Marquee is staying on those high parts, and at least you can see those details now. Before, they really just got lost in all of the other details of this project. If you thought I was going to distress the edges on this one, you're absolutely right, but before I do that, I need to make more ink. The first time I made it, I just kind of did it on the ink pad, kind of guessing. So now I'm going to try to be more precise. I mixed probably about, in the end, about 3/4 yellow, or that turmeric, and then I did a quarter black, and that just darkened it up. I'm using a makeup blender brush here to test it, and it's still a little bit too yellow, and so I added more black, and now it's looking a little bit more like a distressed color. And IOD has these blending bottles. You can write on them and say what color they are, but I got so much ink on the outside, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to tell that that's my distressed ink. And then I'm going to take my little blending brush, and you see there, it's just a really like distressed looking ink, and I'm going to go all the way around the entire project, just really inking up all of those edges and giving it a really, really vintage look, just shading it in really well. So I went all the way around, and I'm like, well, I got to go in all of these edges too, in between all those slats, because it just looks weird just being on the outside. So then I just went around every edge of this entire thing with my distressing ink here. Obviously, this step is not necessary. If you like the bright white colors, leave it. By all means, don't do that. I'm super into the vintage look right now, so for me personally, I love it. Y'all leave a comment down below. Let me know which of today's projects was your favorite. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up on this video. This all helps YouTube know to share out my videos to new viewers, and I appreciate that so much. Finally, for our last project today, I have just this basic little tin planter, and I'm going to use that same petticoat pink so it ties in with all our other projects today. And I'm going to give this thing 2 coats all the way around, drying with my heat gun in between coats. And then once the 2 coats are dry, I'm going to go ahead and seal this up with the DIY liquid patina. DIY paint is very highly pigmented, so once you put that second coat on there, it's basically perfect coverage over these 2 colors. I did decide to leave the inside of this gold. It's not going to show anyway with the way that I style it. I'm getting to use one of the new Connie Lines and Designs from the little mini cuties. I wish I had 2 more tin cans to do this on, because there was 3 of these and they would look so good together. But what I'm doing here is I'm just using a detail paintbrush just with water, and I'm going around the entire little rice paper. I'm trying to stay as close to the edge as I can. I don't want to take any of that beautiful design that Connie has painted on there. And with your paper wet, it makes it really easy to tear. And these rice papers have all these fibers in them, and when you tear it off, you get this really cool edge, and you don't have such a stark line when you're decoupaging a smaller design onto something like this. So I like to do that when I can. See, there you go. So I tore all the way around, and I'm going to use the liquid patina. I'm going to just put a good layer, making sure that I get down in all those crevices. Rice paper is a little bit thicker than regular decoupage paper, so I just lay it in the liquid patina, and then I'm going to use my finger to push it down into all those cracks. You don't have to worry so much about ripping. As you can see, when I was tearing it, it wasn't even easy to tear. But I do want to get it down into all those little crevices. So each one, I'm taking my finger and pushing it down in there. And then I will go over the top again with another layer of the liquid patina. Let it dry, and that's literally all there is to it. I wish I had 2 more cans. I think I've already said that, but I didn't, so I have to just do with the 1. I tied some vintage blue lace that matched, and I put one of new florals called Frosted Boxwood Half Sphere, and look how cute this turned out and how well it goes with all the rest of my Valentine's displays. Thank y'all so much for watching this video today. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope that this has inspired you to do some of your own thrift store makeovers. And don't forget, you can get all the paint and products that I used to make over mine on my website, susieonthefarm.com. I hope y'all have a great night, and I'll see you again next week.